Erev Tov, Rabotai. Let's talk about something interesting. I'll tell you an interesting story which is brought down in Zohar Kadosh. Parashat Behar. Really interesting here. Something deep. What happened was like this, right? Two rabbis walking on the road. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yosef. Walking, it says in the Zohar. And they got to a certain mountain, Eretz Israel, by the way, it's full of mountains. A lot of mountains over there. So what happened? They saw there two people walking, another two other people walking. And then they see another guy, right? Number three, third guy, right? Walking by himself. And this guy, right? The third guy comes to the two people. And he tells them like this. He says, please, he says, I haven't eaten for 2 days. I'm here in the Midbar, in the wilderness. I don't have what to eat 2 days already. Please give me some food to eat. I'm very hungry. I'm gonna faint. So what happened, right? One of those two guys takes, his food and gives him to eat. The problem is, that they're in the wilderness over there, so there isn't much food. They only have, each one has his personal sack. That's all they got. They have nothing else. So what happens is like this, right? That his friend tells him, he says, you crazy? You giving this guy your food? He says, what are you going to eat if you give him your food? He says, what do you think? I'm going to give you my food? I cannot give you my food. I need my food to stay alive. I cannot give you my food. So why are you giving him your food? There's a halacha like this, by the way, you should know. Right? It says in the Rambam, Seuda shelo maspeket. You know what this means? That if you go, right, to see somebody who's eating, he only has enough food for himself, He doesn't have enough food for you. Cannot give you. What can you do? Sometimes it happens like this, So the rule is that, he's not allowed to ask you for that food, Seuda lo maspeket. If he takes your food, he has nothing to eat for himself. He only has one meal, one seudah, So you shouldn't ask him for that food. You're not allowed to, the Rambam says. Why are you asking him? This is all the food that he has. You want to eat? What is he going to eat? You're not allowed to do that. That's what it says in the Rambam. Makes sense, logical, I'll tell you a story about this, by the way, if we have time. There's an interesting story about this. Anyway, right, getting back to the story here. So what happened was, he didn't listen to this guy, and he gave him the food anyway. And not only that, right, this guy was a little bit chutzpah, He said to him, he says, what do you think? He says, I'm going to take your food? He says, no, don't worry, I'll take care of myself. I'm not going to take your food. I'm giving to this guy, because he's in trouble. He's gonna faint. He's gonna die maybe. Who knows? What's it to you? You mind your own business, he tells him. Like this, So what does he do? He gives him, everything, that he's got. All the food that he has in the bag. Some of it even to take, to take with him on the way. He gave him everything, 100%. Zero for him, nothing left. Right? So you think, this guy maybe he's crazy, Well, you killing yourself and giving it to somebody else? You crazy? You understand? So what happened, right? These two rabbis were watching all this, So one says to the other, Rabbi Chia says to Rabbi Yosef, tells him, he says, maybe, this poor guy, who gave him his food, maybe we should give him our food, because to save him, because now he has nothing. That's what, it looks like they had some extra food, a little bit extra. So he says, maybe we should give him a little bit from us. So Rabbi Yossi answers him. He says, no, we're not going to give him nothing. Like this, he tells him. Why? So the rabbi asks him, says, why? What do you want this poor guy to do? To die? So he tells him, he says, there's probably a reason why this guy gave him his food, There's a reason, min hashamayim. So what does that mean? That there was some kind of gezerah, made on this person to die, lo aleinu. Right? And so Hashem gave him a chance to save his life by giving his food to somebody else. So he says, no, don't interfere. This guy, he needs the kapara that he gave him the tzedakah. If we give him to eat, he'll lose the kapara. He'll lose the zchut. So he says, don't give him nothing. He says, you're going to see. Right? Hashem is going to save his life because he gave the tzedakah to this person, to the food to this person. So what happened, right? They're still walking, traveling, all of them, And what happens is, right, that this guy now, who has no food left, he's already feeling hungry, weak, He's like, now he's about to faint, So he's like, oh. So he tells him, his friend, he says, I told you, why did you give your food to this guy? You're crazy. Now you have nothing. You're gonna faint over here, you're gonna fall on the floor. So what does he do, right? This guy, he's tired, he can't walk anymore. He has no food. So what does he do? He goes under a tree, in the shade, and he falls asleep over there. Falls asleep. Okay. So what happened, right? As he falls asleep, the rabbis are looking, to see what's going on. They're watching. He tells him, Rabbi Yossi, watch. You see what's going to happen now. You're going to see. So what happened? All of a sudden, a wild animal, came. Out. There was this desert over there, wild animals over there. Probably a lizard, God knows. Came over there, this wild animal, and he was like, he looks like he's going to kill this guy. He's going to eat him for lunch. This guy's sleeping under the tree. Understand? So Rabbi Yechia tells Rabbi Yossi, he says, oh my God, that's it, this guy's dead, man. This animal's going to eat him alive. Look what's going on over here. So Rabbi Yossi answers him. He says, no. He says, you're going to see. Hashem is going to make a miracle for him now. He's going to be saved. Because of the schut that he gave the food to this good poor guy. So what happened, right? All of a sudden, this guy's sleeping over there under the tree. Comes down a snake, from the tree. Nachash. Big, snake, right? One of those dangerous ones, Comes down and wants to kill, this guy, who's sleeping. The snake wants to kill him. So what happened, right? This animal that was there went, he rose up and he killed the snake. You understand? He went and he attacked the snake and killed him, So this animal, instead of killing this guy, he saved his life. This is what happened, you understand? So, so then, right, once this happened, this guy, all of a sudden, right, he was sleeping, he woke up and he walked away. Like nothing happened, So, now, right, let's listen to this. Rabbi Yossi tells now to Rabbi Chia. He says, oh, okay, you see what happened? He says, I told you there was going to be a nest over here. This guy's life is going to be saved. He says the reason his life was saved is because he gave his food to somebody else. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give him the zechut, to save somebody else's life in order that he should save his own life. Because there was a gezerah on him to die today. So, what happened, right? Once he started to walk away, this guy, the rabbis went, and grabbed him, They told him, hey, wait, come over here. They told him, he says, do you know what just happened to you? He says, your life was saved with a miracle, The Nachash wanted to kill you, and this animal came and saved you, and killed the Nachash. So they told him the whole story, what happened. So now, listen to this, right? They took from the bag, food and gave him to eat. They told him, okay, you're probably hungry, right? You're weak, you poor guy. Oh my God, you must be so hungry. So they gave him food to eat, and he ate, They saved his life too. So why did he now tell him to give the food? Because the miracle with nest was already done, that's it, right? Now he can give him the food, there's no problem anymore. It's not going to take away his zechut. Here his life was already saved. You understand? So this is what happened. This is how it came out, you understand? So what do you learn from here, right? There's a lesson here, a very strong lesson over here, from here. Sometimes things happen, we see things which are not normal, and we say to ourselves, this guy's crazy, what is he doing, doing something like this, he's giving up his whole life, and saving somebody else. Crazy. You're not supposed to do this, according to halakha, But this guy was inspired, something, Mina Shamayim inspired him, to save his own life. So he gave up his food to give to this guy, the poor guy. So you see, you never know. Kadosh Baruch Hu has all kinds of plans, hashgacha pratit. He has all kinds of hashgacha in this world that we don't understand. So we have to sometimes realize, if something is happening which is not so normal, there's a reason for everything, that it's happening this way. I'll tell you a story and we'll finish over here. Tell you an interesting story, right, about this sugya.
Before we go to the next
Yeah,
can I
Yahila.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
Now, that guy was in danger. He had a gezerah. Now, he made a mitzvah. He got sick. Is the person losing that mitzvah, or it stays with him and protects him in the future, or he's already in a danger again?
Well, it depends, it depends on, if he's being a good boy, bad boy, he's doing averot, all kinds of things, involved there, you know what I mean? We cannot now analyze that, because we don't know all the pratim, all the details. But anyway, right, the point is like this. I want to tell you an interesting story. A true story, What happened was the Gaon of Vilna one time, right? Came one Chacham, to his house to visit him, He was a famous Chacham, Gaon of Vilna. Everybody wanted to see him, So comes the one Chacham, to visit him over there. I think it was Magid Midubna. That was his name. He was a darshan, this guy. Gaon of Vilna was, not just a darshan, he was a gedolador. So anyway, right, comes to him, the Magid Midubna, to see the Gaon of Vilna. So the Gaon was eating, dinner, stuff like this, right? He was eating, So he comes, the rabbi comes in, and so he tells his wife, he says, he tells the rabbi, he says, come eat, take something from the table. I want you to eat together with me. He invited him to eat, So the rabbi is refusing to eat. He says, no, he says, I'm sorry, I cannot eat. Sorry. Why, not glad kosher? That's not the reason why. That's not the reason why. So so then, right, what happened was the Gaon of Vilna, he understood what happened over here, because you know what the rabbi said? This rabbi said, he says, you know why I can't eat? The doctor told me I'm not allowed. The doctor told me, he says. I have some kind of special diet, that's what, the people thought, right? They thought he has a special diet, he's not allowed to eat, whatever. So Gaon of Vilna, he understood the real meaning of this, when he said the doctor doesn't allow me to eat. It wasn't really that it's his doctor. That's not what he meant. So Gaon of Vilna, he understood. So what did he do? He told his wife, he says, the Rebbetzin, the Rabbanit. He tells her, he says, go to the fridge. He says, take out some food, and put more food on the table. So once he saw more food, this rabbi, he started to eat all of a sudden, All of a sudden the doctor is okay. No problem. So, what do you call it? So his wife asked him, to the Gaon, the Rabbanit, the Rebbetzin, told him, why did you take out more food from the fridge? There was enough food on the table, as it is, And then all of a sudden he ate, what happened? What, the doctor now gave up? So he explains to her, his wife, he says, you don't understand. He says, when he said the doctor doesn't allow me to eat, you know which doctor he was talking about? Not the doctor over here in the clinic over here. We're not talking about that doctor. He says, talking about the Rambam. The Rambam was a doctor, right? The Rambam was a doctor. The Rambam doesn't allow me to eat. What does it have to do with the Rambam? As we said, right, the Rambam says, if you see somebody, who doesn't have enough food for guests, just for himself, you're not allowed to take that food. It's only for him. It's not enough. Seudah shelo maspeket. So he says, that's what he meant to say. The doctor doesn't allow me. The Rambam doesn't allow me to take. Why? Because there's not enough food for everybody. You understand? That's what he meant to say. He says, that's why I told you to take out more food. To show him, that there's enough food for everybody. Don't worry, there's enough. Dayenu, Baruch Hashem, Shtabach Shemo. So then that's why he ate. Baruch Adonai Leolam. אמן ואמן. רבי חנן שאומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לעשות את ישראל, לפיכך הקריבו להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר אדוני חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה בידי.